And that's fantastic because we know right now we're changing seasons. We're transitioning from summer to fall, and that's when a lot of people do get sick. So yeah, to be able to have a resource like that, I think is absolutely fantastic in Jace Medical. Now, speaking of resources, looks like the Falcons have all their resources coming into a critical matchup against the Packers. And the reason we say that is this, because the Packers looked really, really good last week against the Bears. Granted, it was the Bears. We get that. But it's not so much always your opponent, which Ryan Nielsen talked a little bit about that several times this week. But a lot of times it's also about you having the ability to execute your game plan because everyone's understanding their assignment and executing within themselves, right? And so that brings us to where we think the Falcons should be just in terms of execution, because they were able to, especially in the second half. The reason they won that game is because they stuck to their guns. They did a little bit of tweaking here and there, but ultimately they were able to execute their plan in the second half of the game. That's how you get a dub. Now, here's the thing. The one question that everybody's been asking, however, even with a rating that ended up being the second highest rating in the NFL QBR, that is last week in Desmond Ridder. Oddly enough, Jordan Love was the number one rated QBR last week, but people still had a lot of questions about Desmond Ridder's because at the end of the day, it's 116 yards versus 245 yards, right? And so those are the kinds of things that make you go, those two things, they might be 1 and 2 stat line wise, but they're not really 1 and 2. So what is it that Arthur Smith can do or needs to do to put Des Ridder in a position to succeed Sunday? And Jarvis, if we take it a step further, what's the definition of success for Des?
Oh, wow. It starts with the offensive line, right? We have to start there because when you have a rookie in Matthew Bergeron, who in his first start, grading out higher than Chris Lindstrom, I know no one had that, saw that happening, on Sunday at 4:00. Like, how Matthew Bergeron grade out better than our $20 million a right guard. So I think that, it starts up front with the guys, not only Chris Lindstrom, but obviously Caleb McGarry and also Drew Dahlman and Matthew Bergeron continuing to be solid like he was against the Carolina Panthers. And got to put the Wiley veteran and Jake Matthews as well, because Aaron and I talked about this. After going back and watching that film, Derek Brown touched everybody. He gave everybody the work, not just that right side offensive line or Drew Dahlman. Like he went down the line and touched every last person and can put together a highlight film of each person that he went up against. So so now what you're faced with now is not necessarily, you might be faced with more guys because the Green Bay Packers they have a wave of dudes they can send at you, from Preston Smith to Rashawn Gary to Decatur's finest, Devontae Wyatt, out of UGA. So they have a lot of guys that can throw at you. So I think that in order for this offense to be successful, or Desmond Ridder to be successful, I think it starts with the offensive line, and then you're gonna need more than one chunk play. Because I give him the Kyle Pitts throw in the second half. That was great. Kyle Pitts made a great on the football, and he brought it down. That's what you expect from the highest drafted tight end in NFL history. So I think right now, if they can able to get like at least 2 more chunk plays, I think we'll still see that number from like 116 maybe go to like a 250 or 255 or even 265, and you can kind of see, okay, all right, this is what success looks like from Desmond Ridder on a weekly basis.
Yeah. And I would say the same. The definition of success for Des Ridder goes with the definition of success from the O-line. That's no question. Absolutely. Because that's where everything starts and stops. So even if we see more of that creativity that Arthur Smith is talking about, and I think it could work very well against this particular secondary. Like if you went into a 22 personnel type situation where you went more with a couple tight ends and a couple running backs and maybe just one receiver, that could bode well against this particular defense, right? But in order for you to even see if that kind of creativity can work, the O-line has to give you something up front. They have to give you something. They got to win battles in the trenches more often than not. And last week, you saw them win some battles in the trenches late, but you need to see this start to finish, because this Green Bay Packers team is a team that starts fast and they plan on finishing fast. Now, the one thing I will say is this: we talk about secret weapons or we talk about X factors. And so I'll ask that X factor as well. This question, but this question that I want to pose to you first is about Ryan Nielsen, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like him going into the Chester drawers. He might have actually played the best chess match last week, right? In terms of making Bryce Young look like one thing in the first half and another thing in the second half, right? So I felt like Ryan Nielsen really made some nice adjustments last week. But what does he need to do this week in order for this defense overall to have another solid showing and, dare I say, have just a little bit more of an impact up front?
Oh, he's going to have to put some pressure on Jordan Love. However he needs to do it, that's what he needs to do, because when you think about all of the injuries that the Green Bay Packers are dealing with, you got Christian Watson may or may not be, making an appearance. Aaron Jones is questionable. So all of those things kind of are key factors as to what you'll be able to do from a defensive coordinator standpoint, right?
Indeed.
If I don't really have and even Romeo Dobbs as well, like he's dealing with some stuff, so some soft tissue injuries. So when you have the main targets, the main wide receiver guys dealing with things, that means, hey, I know Jeff Okudah more than likely won't be out there, but we got some people that can play some man covers. Trey Flowers got some size on him. He can kind of do his thing, and then of course with AJ Terrell, who had an amazing. It was almost like he didn't even play last week because they weren't even throwing the ball his way. So I think that when you have those options on the outside, I think that it affords you the opportunity to maybe send some pressures. Have Jordan Love thinking that the line of scrimmage is like, okay, well, we didn't see this last week, so that's all it takes right there. Just that or I didn't see this, or what is this, or what are they doing right now?
Yep.
That half a second is all it's going to take to give Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata and Calais Campbell and Bud Dupree, all those guys, just a little bit of extra time to be able to get home. So I think that if they can put some pressure, show some things that, show Jordan Love some things that he's never seen before, or he's not necessarily used to, or they didn't prepare for. And I think that, Ryan Nielsen will be cooking with grease and getting off to a really good start instead of having to making adjustments on the back end.
Yeah, and I think that's the one good thing about what we saw last week in terms of them now knowing, okay, this is what we don't want to do, so that, to your point, we won't have to make as many adjustments. And not that they made a lot of adjustments. I think they did more tweaking maybe than anything.
Yeah, of course.
But still, you want to see as little tweaking as possible. And while it's great to get 2 sacks, because we know there were many games, not just last year, but these last couple of years where we didn't see the quarterback affected in any way, shape, or form that was meaningful, and definitely didn't see any on their on their backs. It's nice to get a couple last week, but you really want to see even more this week, because you want to be able to throw Jordan Love off his rhythm early, and then hopefully early turns into offense. So speaking of that, on both sides of the ball, let's go back to offense, and let's give one guy who you would say would be the X factor on offense for the Falcons to get a win this weekend.
Ooh, Cordero Patterson.
I'm
going with the Joker, because hey, to have that title, you don't know what to expect. If you didn't play last week, you don't know what to expect from Cordero Patterson. I think that he can be a weapon that I really feel like Arthur Smith can get really creative with, and to put him into games, because a lot of times defense coordinators call plays according to what type of personnel that they have in the huddle. If you have a Kyle Pitts, Cordero Patterson, Bijan Robinson, and Tyler Algier in the game at the same time, it's like, all right, so what are we doing here? And I said, that little is going to be what you need to be able to get that playoff or maybe take a shot deep down the field. So I think that Cordero Patterson coming back, I think it's going to work out well for the Falcons. And give them opportunity to be able to make some plays down the field.
Yeah, and I would like to say on offense, I have to agree with you, because he was a wild card even before there was a Bijan Robinson. And the reason I say that, meaning because you kind of knew what Tyler Algier was, who's more like the bruising back, who definitely could still catch a ball here or there. But with Bijan, you almost feel like you've got a 50-50 in terms of kind of half running back, half receiver. Well, Cordell Patterson is the original blueprint of that for the Falcons, that is, right?
Right.
And of course can give you something on special teams as well. So I want to co-sign on that and say, yeah, he to me is the X factor for the Falcons on offense, because hey, that's kind of what a Joker is. Joker's wild. Joker can do anything. What about on defense? Who would you say would be your X factor for the Falcons on defense?
I want to see a little bit more from David Onyemata. Like going back through the film, it's just like, all right, man, let's see that combination. Let's see you take some attention off of Grady Jarrett. Let's see you be so forceful that hey, they have to pay attention to you more so than they do 97. So I think I'm looking for a guy like David Onyemata, and also Calais Campbell. Go ahead and get that 100 out the way, because I know it's on your mind. I overheard talking to his family before the game. He was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get it in the first quarter." Obviously, he didn't get it, so I think that Calais Campbell go ahead and knock out that sack, and then I want to see a little bit more pressure on the interior from David Onyemata.
Gotcha. And my X factor would be Jerry Gray, the DB whisperer, because you got a secret weapon with him. If you look at Jair Alexander, Rudy Ford, and a bunch of those guys from the DB room for the Packers, Jerry Gray had him. So he kind of knows their tendencies. He knows what to look for and how they manage through. That could be a little bit of a secret weapon, because of course he was their DB coach and their game coordinator for a couple of seasons before heading here to be the assistant head coach of defense for the Falcons. So I kind of like Jerry Gray because the way he thinks, and you and I have had an opportunity to speak with him individually about his thought process and kind of how he approaches the game. And I just think that every now and again, tendencies of tendencies. Yeah, you can change a little bit of your game here and there, but ultimately who you are and how you rock as a player is how you rock. And so Jerry Gray, all the little things that you saw in that DB room with the Packers, hopefully you'll bring it to bear here to be able to have shared with the wide receiver or pass catcher core, we'll say, for the Falcons, to say, hey, when you see these tendencies, this is what this means. This is how he usually moves. This is how he moves. Maybe that could be a plus for the Falcons as well. But we'll see. We will see on Sunday. What do you guys think? I mean, who is your X factor on offense? Who's your X factor on defense for the Falcons to be able to get the second win of the season? You know what to do. Drop a comment in our chat for YouTube, and of course, download ATL Day Ones wherever you get your podcasts.